Okay, I think we can begin. Hey guys, thank you so much for turning up today for another Appsmith live demo. So till now in all our demos, we've been focusing on sort of creating a CRUD application and how you can essentially use different data systems, databases or backends to build a CRUD application. In this live demo, we'll be doing something different. We'll be focusing on a slightly more business kind of a problem where we'll talk about how we stitch at Appsmith. We use different services, different SaaS software providers, how we use that API together to create like a very, very important customer journey and how we get customers, how we target customers, send them the right kind of email communication, and how we sort of improve our process in the backend using Appsmith. So what we'll be demoing today, what Confidence, who's on the call, will be demoing today, will be how we essentially identify users who are at risk of churning or are churning. And we then send out emails, a bunch of automated campaigns to them, some personal emails to them as well, to essentially try and understand why they're churning out, engage that user, and obviously offer them support and help to find success on Appsmith. So our current stack right now, what we'll be exploring today is Mixpanel. We use Mixpanel for our analytics. We'll be running a report on potentially users that are potentially churning. But for the sake of this demo, we'll not be showing any sensitive user data. It'll all be data from our own users from Appsmith. And that data flows into Appsmith, from which we've connected to two services, Reply.io and ActiveCampaign. So ActiveCampaign is a marketing automation software. So it does the job of MailChimp, SendGrid, HubSpot, bits and pieces of features from all these services available in ActiveCampaign. That's what we use for our marketing automation and creating automations. And also to Reply.io, which is a tool like SalesLoft or Outreach, which helps you send out personalized email campaigns at sort of scale. So this is what we'll be stitching together and showing you a dashboard. We'll be using multiple components of Appsmith and how you can essentially empower your users, your internal, your team, like your product managers or your customer success executives, to essentially be able to do this seamlessly by just building a super simple system. So Confidence, please, if you can go ahead. And obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. If you want us to do something different and show you something different, please let us know. And as always, this recording will be available online, and we'll be sending it to you via email as well. Over to you, Confidence.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil. Sorry, Akshay. So I'm going to share my screen right now so that you see the dashboard we'll be working on. Let's move this away. So I believe you can all see my screen, right?
Yeah, Confidence.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the dashboard we are going to be building. It is designed to manage churned users who stopped using our product for some time. So we can see here on the dashboard, we have a list of those users that we can easily browse through and see the user we want to reach out to. Say, for example, we want to get more information on this particular user, so we can click on that user. And right here, we have more detailed information about that user so that we get an idea of why that user probably stops using our product. So on the information side of it, we have a map showing the user's current location. We also have more detailed information about the user's profile, such as the user's name, the user's email, country, and company. And we have the option to see a smart look recording for this user so that we understand what the user was trying to do the last time the user used our app. So that will give us more context when we go ahead to reach out to that user. So I'm going to close this up. And then lastly, we can go ahead with the reach out process to actually communicate with the user. Clicking on the confirm button here would do a few things. It would notify the team, our personal team, that we have started the reach out process. And also at the end of the day, would be sending the email after that notification is done. So this is what we're going to be building. And as was already mentioned, we'll be using APIs from a few services. The first is Mixpanel, our analytics service. We'll also be using ActiveCampaign for sending the emails, for sending notifications to our team members on Slack. And we would also be using Reply.io for sending the email to that user we want to reach out to. So this is an overview of what we'll be building. Let us get started. So right now I'm on my Appsmith dashboard, and I'll go ahead to create a new app. First thing I would like to do would be to set out the layout for the UI. So I'm just going to bring in a few widgets to show everything we have on the dashboard. I need a text widget right here to properly label the dashboard. So let's say churned users, and I'm going to set the text size to heading 1 and center this. Then I'll need a few more widgets for the layout. So let's draw this down a bit. And I'm going to expand this so that we'll have more space to work with. I'll need a list widget. So let's bring this down a bit. And over on this side, I'll need another container widget. Then I can bring in a map widget right here. And now we have the entire layout of the UI showing up. So the next thing I'd like to do would be to connect this application to the Mixpanel API so that we can get the list of churned users. And because I'll be using the Mixpanel API quite a bit, it will make sense to save that API as a data source so that I can easily reuse this. So I'm just going to go ahead with creating an API, and I'll be clicking on the Save as Data Source button. So let's paste in the API name. I'm going to call this Mixpanel, MP for short, and I'll need to put in my authorization headers here so that I would not need to reauthorize every API I'll be building using the Mixpanel API. So that's the whole idea of using it as a data source. So I'm going to click on the Save button, and now I can go back to continue with my API. So the first API I'll be hitting from the Mixpanel data source would be the one to get the list of churned users. So let's call this get users. And this will be hitting the engage endpoint. And I'll need to pass across my project ID. So this is going to be a post request, and I can get my project ID from the URL right here. Oh, sorry. So this is the project ID. So I'm just going to paste that here. For the settings, I want to increase the timeout because sometimes the Mixpanel API can be very slow, and the API will actually time out before we get a response. So for the body, I would be setting a form body, and I will want to filter the response by the cohort I selected. So remember right here, we have a cohort we are using for this demo, and the name of the cohort is demo churn cohort. Here is the cohort ID. I'll be making use of this in the API. So this is 1266919. So I'll need to filter by that cohort ID. So let's say filter by cohort, and I'll need to pass across that ID. So this is 1266919. All right, so let us test this by calling the API to see if everything works well. And we are getting a response from Mixpanel. So you notice right here, we have an object, and in the results property, which is an array, we actually get information about the user. And each user has a properties object, a dollar properties, whereby we can then go on to access every other information about that user using the dollar sign. But that is a little too much. So we'll need to massage the data a little bit to make it easy for us to work with. So let's head back to the list widget. And first thing I'd like to do here would be to rename this widget to users list. And for its items, I am going to be grabbing the data from the get users.data, which is the query we just wrote, .results. And this is going to be an array, so I'll need to map over this. And here I'll be returning a new object that has everything we want it to contain. So the first thing I'd like to return will be the city. And I'll be getting that from r.$properties $city. And here we are returning the city. I'm just going to paste in the other things we would need to grab from the properties object so that we would not have to type all of that out. So we are returning the city, the user's email, the user's last name, first name, latitude, longitude, company, and country. So we are passing all of these data right now to the list widget, and you can go ahead to make use of this data. Okay, so now let's start building the list out. First thing I'd like to do here will be to take out the image widget because we would not be needing that. And we want to show the user's name and email, and also bring it in a text widget to serve as a dummy button widget. So let's go ahead to start working with all of this. So this will be name. And let's resize this a bit so that we have the name showing up properly. All right, for this would be current item dot first name. And I also want the last name showing up, so I'm just going to add that here. Current item dot last name. Okay, it seems I'm doing this binding in the wrong widget, so I'm just going to cut this out. So this is going to be email because right now I'm on the widget for email. So let's say current item dot email, and we have the email showing up right there. And let's update this label to say email. Then for this, we can paste that in, and we have the first name and last name. Although this user has undefined first name and last name, but that would give us the first name and last name. Then for the last text widget we have here, we can say view. We are going to make this kind of like fake button widget. And the reason for doing this is because we want the click event to be passed to the native click handler for the list item. So if you take a look at the list widget, it has a native on click event. So I want to search that when I click on this view text, which is actually a button, we pass that across to this on list item click event, and then this gets fired. So what we want to do when an item is clicked on is that we actually want to go and get the smart loop recordings for that particular user. And for that, we would need to hit another Mixpanel API. So I'm just going to create a new API from the Mixpanel data source we have right there. So let's call this get recording. And this is going to be a post request. We are going to be hitting their JQL endpoint that evaluates JavaScript, and we also need to pass in our project ID. Let's go and grab the project ID. All right. Then we would need to send a body, which would be the script we want to be executed on the server. Then for the value of that script, I am just going to paste something right here, and I'll quickly explain that. So what this script does is that it goes to get the smart loop recording for that user who was selected from the users list. We are getting that data from here, and we are getting the smart loop recording for that user from the beginning of the year to whatever today's date is. So we already have a user selected, and looking at the evaluated value pane, we can see that we have Nikhil's email showing up here. So let's run this and see what data we get. Okay, so it seems I need to increase the timeout for this. So let's run that again. Okay, so it seems we are having some issues with this API. Okay, so what I'll do is I think I'll go and try using a different user, and we should be able to get some recordings for a different user. Okay, so let's try this one more time. Okay, so we're getting a response back, but this user has no recording, so that's a different issue. So hopefully we'll get to play around with users who have recordings as we go on with building the app. So now we have an API to get the user recording, and what we want to do now is that whenever an item is clicked, we want to actually go and get the recording for that particular user. So for this, I'm going to go to call an API and select the get recording endpoint so that we get the smartly recording for the user who is selected. Now we can go ahead with building the details pane for the user. We have a map widget showing up right here. And what we can do is we can supply that user's information to the map we have right here. So now let's go on to supply that info to the map. Okay, so we have the latitude. I'm going to pull the data for the latitude from the user who was selected on the list with users list. So this will be users list dot selected item dot lat. And because I'll be needing this a few other times, I am just going to copy this over and use that again here. So for the longitude, this would be .lng. And lastly, we want to show the user city right here. So I'm just going to put that city right here. So it seems the user who is selected on the table does not have any map data. So what we can do is that I'm going to cheat a bit and filter this array so that we're only returning users who actually have map data. Okay, so I'm going to do dot filter. And I'll only return users that have a latitude, which is the map data. And we can see that selecting this user and coming back to the map widget, we actually have some map data showing up right here. Seems there's a little bit of an issue. All right, so what I'm going to do right here is to replace this object with something that is fixed. And there we have the user's map data showing up. For the user's initial location, I'm just going to paste that in again. And we have a pointer showing users current location on the map. And we will need to build up the other widgets to show up the user's detail. So I'll need a couple of text widgets, one to show the user's name, another to show the user's email, the user's country, the user's company, and I need other text widgets for their values. Okay, so let's resize them a bit so that we have more room. Okay, so the first we have here is the user's name. So let's call this name. And just like we did with the list widget, we are going to be grabbing the first name and last name. Only difference is that we'll be grabbing it from the user who was selected from the list widget. So this will be user list dot selected item dot first name. And I also want to add in the last name. Just list dot selected item dot last name. All right, this user does not have a first name and last name, that's why we're getting undefined. Then this is going to be email. And similarly, we'll be grabbing that from the users list dot selected item dot. I'm just going to copy this over because I'll need it a few more times, dot email. And we have the email right there. Then we also want to show the user's company. Have company there, and I'm just going to paste in what I have copied, and this will be dot company, and this would be country. I'm going to paste this. This will be selected item dot country, and we have the user's information showing up right here. So the next thing we need to do would be to actually put a button here to show the user smartly recording. So let's go ahead to build that. So we have a button here. I'm going to expand this a bit. Set the button style to secondary. And when this is clicked, what we want to do is that we want to open up a page to show the user smartly recording. So we're getting the page name from the get recording query. Dot data dot, this is going to be an array, so that would be index 0 dot properties dot smart look play URL, and that is going to return the URL, smart look URL for that user who is selected. And we don't want to pass over any query params. So for the buttons label, what we want to do is that we want to show a loading animation whenever the get recording query is running. So what we can do is access the get recording dot is loading. If this is loading, what we want to do is we don't want anything showing up. We actually want the loading animation to be on the button. But if it is not loading, we want to say view recording, and we have the button configured. So we can click on this button and it should take us to the smart look record for the user who was selected on the table widget, on the list widget rather. Okay, so let's go back. And the next thing I want to do would be to build up the flow for sending emails to the user. So for that, I'll need an image widget, and I'll need a modal widget rather. So we have a modal here. I'm going to dismiss this modal because I would like to use a button to open up that modal. Let's resize this a bit. And for the button, I'm going to say send mail. And when this is clicked, what I want to do would be to open up that modal and select the modal name, which is modal 1. So let us give this a test run. And here we have the modal showing up. I'm going to configure this modal a bit so that it fits what we want to do. And for this modal, I would need a few input widgets. So the first things I want to do would be to bring in labels that would label whatever input widget we would be working with. And I'm just going to drag in those input widgets right here. Okay, so now let's go ahead to resize this widget so that we have more space. The first input widget would be showing up the user's email who was selected from the table. So this would be email. And for the default text of the input widget, we're just going to grab this from the users list dot selected item dot, let me copy this again, dot email in this case, email. And we want this to be disabled because we don't want someone going in to select the user's email. Then we can go ahead to fill in the other properties. This is going to be last name. And let's just say first name. And then we can, oh, I dismissed the widget. And then we can go to the input and update the name because we need to access the value of this input widget while trying to send the message. So this would be f name input. And the default text will be coming from, okay, I already have something copied, so let's paste that. Selected item, the first name. And last one here would be the last name. And this widget would also be updated. So let's call this last name input. And for its default text, I'm going to paste that in. This would be dot last name. And now we have the form configured. So I can give this a test run by going to select a user who has a name so that we can see, okay, this user does not have a name. So let's just, okay, this user also does not have a name. So I'm selecting this user. Now we can click on the send mail. And here we have the data prefilled. So the reason why this is really useful is because some users do not have a first name and last name for our particular use case. So that is why it will make sense to supply a first name and last name before actually going ahead to send the email, such as the user we have selected right here on the list. So now we would want to configure the actions for the confirm button. So when this is clicked, we actually want to do a few things. We want to send a notification to our team on Slack. And we also want to go ahead to send that email to the user. And to do that, we'll be working with the Active Campaign API and also the reply.io API. So let's go ahead to set that up. I would need to create a new API. So because I'll be using the ActiveCampaign API more than once, to make sense to save this as a data source. And I'm just going to paste in that URL. So let's say ActiveCampaign, and I would need some API token for the headers. And for its value, I'm just going to paste it right here. And I can save this. Now I'll be taken back to the ActiveCampaign API I was trying to work on initially. So this would be a user to an API to get the user's ID, the user's contact ID. So let's call this get user. And this is going to be a get request. We're going to be accessing the contacts endpoint. And as a query params, we would send across the user's email. For its value, we'll be grabbing it from the user who was selected from the users list. All right, so we are getting the user's email. So let's run this and see the response from the API. So for the response, we actually want to get the user's contact ID from the contacts array, and which is an object of just one, which is an array of just one item. And looking at this response, we can get the contact ID right here. So we'll be using the response from this API to send notifications to our team on Slack. So now let's go ahead to build the API to send notifications. So I'm just going to be using the ActiveCampaign data source. And this is going to be a post request. Let's name this first off. So this will be send notification. And it is going to be a post request. We are going to be hitting the contact list endpoint. And for its body, it is going to be a JSON body. So let's go ahead to configure that. So we have the JSON body enabled. And here is what the body would be. So we need to get our list ID, which is the list that actually activates the workflow for sending the Slack message. And we can get that from the URL right here, which is list 11. And also have a status of 1. So that is what we have specified here. And for the user's contact ID, we are getting the contact ID from the get user query. So the get user, the data.contacts, which is an array, and then we are going to get the ID. So this will actually send a notification to our teammates on Slack when we go ahead to run this. And we have that working. Lastly, what we want to do would be to configure the API that actually sends the message to the user. And we'll be doing that using the reply.io API. So for this, I'm going to go and create a new API. Because I'll be using this just once, I would not need to make this a data source. So this will be send email. And this is going to be a post request. I'll need some API keys. So I'll need to specify the X API key. For its value, I'm just going to paste that in. And we also need a body for this because it's a post request, JSON, and I'll paste this in. So first parameter we have specified here is the campaign ID, and we can grab that from the ID of the sequence we have here specified for sending out the email. So right now we have a churn rescue sequence, and this is the ID gotten from that place. Then we also want to update the user's first name and last name in case they are undefined. And we are pulling this data from the last name input and the first name input. And for the user's email, we're grabbing this from the list directly. All right, so we have the flow set up for actually notifying the team and sending out the emails. So now let's go and wire that up with the button we have on the modal. So when this button is clicked, I'm going to go into the JavaScript mode. We want to do a lot of things. The first thing we want to do would be to get the user's contact ID by running the get user query. And when that is done, we want to go ahead to send the notification using the send notification query. When that is done, we want to go ahead to send the email. So we hit the send email.run. Then we want to get some feedback when the whole process completes. So if this is successful, we would like to show the admin who will be making use of this application that it was successful. So I want to show an alert and say email sent. And we can set this to success for the alert type. But if this did not work, we also want to let the admin know by showing him some message. So we can say show alert. And for its content, we can say something went wrong. And we can set the alert type to warning. And we have the on-click action configured for this. So right now we can go ahead to test the entire workflow. I'm just going to dismiss all of this. And let's find a user that has a valid email ID. Okay, so I'm clicking on this user, and right here we can see the user's entire information, the map data and the user's profile. Then we can go on to send an email. You notice that the view recording button was loading. This is because it was calling the get recording query. And now we can go ahead to send an email to that particular user. So clicking on confirm would run all of this logic we have specified. And yeah, we have the response that the email was sent. So we can go ahead to share this application. We can make it public if we want everyone to access it, or we can choose to invite members of our team we want to have access to this application. We can supply their email, select a role, and click on the invite button. And we are done, so I'm going to deploy this. And right now we have the application ready to manage churned users. So this is very similar to the application we set out to build at the beginning of this demo. And this is the application we have built. All right, so this is it. Back to you, Akshay.
Hey, conference. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. So Navdeep, I was just responding to you on chat. So we're using reply.io for emailing because we want to send out personal email sequences to people. But and there are no sort of limits other than what you said, so that your email account doesn't count as spam. But for transactional emails, we use ActiveCampaign and SendGrid sometimes. And obviously limits there depend on what plan you have and what you buy. So yeah, thanks conference for this. So I think one thing that I just want to explain in this is that we use multiple services that we are stitching together to send emails. So you might have something else instead of Reply, or you might be using something like Twilio. But I think the concepts remain the same. I think some of these softwares, I would say, have convoluted ways of getting to do what you want using API, which is why we're showing you an ActiveCampaign that we had to sort of hit the get the contact ID, otherwise they would be added to list. So this is broadly how you can use Appsmith to essentially use different API, whatever services you have, and create an application that your team could possibly use and leverage to create much better customer experiences. We are open to questions now. If you have any questions, do let us know. We're all here. We're happy to answer. Then seems like we don't have any questions. So I think we can end the session. So thank you so much, guys, for attending today. As always, we'll have a recording. We'll put out soon. We'll send you emails of the recording as well. And yeah, if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, there are multiple ways to reach us. There's Discord. You can ask for in-product help on the chat, or you can feel free to email any of us, and we'll be there. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Navdeep. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, conference. Great session. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, bye, Akshay.